Imagine sharing a bed with your partner. Like, you watch her belly grow over the months.
Right.
You paint the nursery together. You meticulously address and mail out invitations to a gender reveal party.
Yeah, you do all the normal things.
Exactly. You celebrate with your friends, your family, your entire community. And you do this day in and day out for 10 straight months.
10 months. That's a really long time to keep that up.
It is. And then one morning you discover that not only was the pregnancy a piece of painted silicone bought on the internet, but the person you share a life with has just committed one of the most brutal, unthinkable murders in Texas history.
Just to keep you from finding out the truth.
Right, just to hide it. Today, we are dissecting an illusion so massive it ended in absolute tragedy.
It really is the kind of case that it just completely fractures your understanding of human psychology.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a level of sustained pathological deception that just completely defies logic. And, the devastating violence that occurs when that deception finally collides with physical reality.
We are bringing you a deep dive today into a case that fundamentally shatters our baseline assumptions about trust.
Yeah, it really does.
And we are pulling from an incredibly comprehensive review and analysis by journalist and content creator Twanna,
who's also known online as Queen T, right?
Yes, Queen T. She recently analyzed the 2026 Netflix documentary Maternal Instinct,
which was directed by Jessica Dimmock and released just in June 2026. Maternal Instinct looks back at the 2020 case of Taylor Parker.
Down in the small town of New Boston, Texas.
Right, and what Twanna does so brilliantly in her review is she unpacks the documentary's psychological dissection of this elaborate deception.
And our mission here today is to basically follow that lead. Like, we're going to move far beyond those sensationalized, bold print headlines you might remember seeing.
Because there are a lot of them.
So many. But we want to really understand the architecture of this lie, the resulting tragedy, and, the ethical tightrope of true crime storytelling.
Because how we consume these stories and how they are framed for us as viewers, it matters deeply.
It really does.
It does. And to effectively analyze the documentary's framing, we have to look really closely at the underlying mechanisms of the crime itself.
Right. But before we go any further, I just want to pause and speak directly to you, the listener.
Yeah, this is important.
We are going to be discussing some intensely heavy, deeply distressing subject matter today. This involves extreme violence and the loss of life.
Including a pregnant mother and an infant.
Exactly. We completely acknowledge that this is a tough space to sit in, but it is a crucial topic for understanding the absolute extremes of human manipulation.
And the blind spots in our social fabric, really.
Yes, and the devastating ripple effects that a crime like this has on a community.
Right, because if we are going to understand the horrific culmination of this case, like the violence that destroyed the Simmons-Hancock family, we first have to understand the architecture of the lie that preceded it.
It didn't just happen overnight.
No, not at all. The violence was the terminal point of a 10-month fabrication. And, to build a lie of that magnitude, it requires a very specific kind of psychological scaffolding.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get into the biological reality of this, because this is where the deception really begins.
Right.
In 2020, Taylor Parker was 27 years old. And the absolute undeniable reality of her situation was that she had previously undergone a hysterectomy.
Which means, medically speaking, pregnancy was not just unlikely, it was a biological impossibility.
There was zero ambiguity.
None.
Yet she somehow convinced her boyfriend, Wade Griffin, who was also in his late 20s, and her entire community that she was expecting a child. For 10 months.
10 months. I really want to emphasize that timeline because, think about it. It is longer than a standard human gestation period.
Yeah, normally it's like maybe 9.5 months tops.
Exactly. She had to sustain a biologically impossible narrative past the point where biology itself would naturally resolve it.
Wow.
And we're not talking about a brief episode of pseudosciasis either.
Which is, what exactly?
It's a rare psychiatric condition where a woman genuinely believes she is pregnant and her body actually mimics the symptoms.
Right, false pregnancy.
Right. Pseudosciasis is a profound psychosomatic response. But the documentary and Twanna's analysis, they make it very clear that this was not pseudosciasis.
She didn't actually believe she was pregnant.
No, this was malingering. This was a calculated, conscious, daily choice to deceive. She knew she wasn't pregnant, and she took deliberate physical steps to manufacture the illusion.
I am so glad you brought up the physical steps because I'm trying to understand the actual logistics of this. Like, how exactly do you fake a pregnancy to people who see you every single day?
It takes a lot of effort.
It really does. It wasn't just a verbal lie. It was like a full-scale theatrical production.
Mhm.
She used a silicone belly. She forged
Yeah,
ultrasounds.
the mechanics of faking a pregnancy in the digital age are actually terrifyingly accessible.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's an entire cottage industry online that caters to novelty pregnancy items.
Like joke gifts?
Sort of.
Mhm.
Originally, realistic silicone bellies were manufactured for the stage and film industry, or as prosthetics for surrogacy situations. But today, you could just go online, and they're easily accessible to anyone.
That's wild.
You can order different weights and sizes to correspond to different trimesters, and the same goes for ultrasounds.
Wait, how do you just buy a fake ultrasound? Don't they have like hospital watermarks and specific patient data on them?
You don't even need the dark web for this.
Yeah.
There are surface-level novelty websites where you can literally input a fake name, a fake date, a fake clinic, and generate a highly realistic ultrasound image in seconds.
Oh, wow.
Some people use them for pranks, which is, ethically dubious in itself.
Yeah, pretty bad taste.
Right. But in the hands of someone executing a pathological deception, it becomes a weaponized document.
Okay, that makes sense for the physical props. But I want to talk about the endurance required here.
The stamina.
Yes, the stamina. Think about holding a 10-pound weight straight out at arm's length, doing it for a minute. That's hard, but you can muscle through it.
Sure.
Doing it for 5 minutes, your muscles are screaming. Your entire focus is just on not dropping the weight.
Right, it's agonizing.
But doing it for 10 months, that requires a terrifying pathological level of commitment. It means every single day you wake up, the first thing you have to do is pick up that heavy, fake reality, strap it to your body, and hold it out for the world to see.
And that physical endurance test intersects perfectly with the digital world she inhabited.
Oh, for sure.
Documentary Maternal Instinct makes a very deliberate point to highlight this.
Hmm.
And critics have praised how it portrays the contrast between the hyper-curated social media life Parker created and the physical reality that ultimately demanded proof.
Right, because on Facebook or Instagram, a forged ultrasound is just a JPEG.
It's nothing.
It's just pixels on a screen.
Yeah.
You post it, the likes roll in, the congratulatory comments pile up, and you get this massive dopamine hit of validation.
Exactly.
It feels completely real online.
Social media allows us to construct these avatars of ourselves.
Yeah.
We curate the best moments, or in this case, a completely fictitious narrative.
Yeah.
And for someone engaging in a pathological lie, social media is just an incredible enabler. It creates an echo chamber of validation.
Every comment just feeds it.
Right. Every
Wow.
congratulations or you're glowing.
Yeah.
Comment reinforces the delusion and rewards the behavior. But the critical tension the film explores is that digital illusions are inherently weightless.
Physical reality is not.
Exactly. You can post a picture of a silicone belly, but eventually, in the physical world, a baby has to be produced. The biological clock is ticking, even if the biology is fake.
Let's talk about how this lie managed to survive in the physical world for so long, because we really have to look at the environment.
The setting is huge here.
We are talking about New Boston, Texas. It's a small town. And the people involved, Taylor Parker, Wade Griffin, and the victim, Reagan Simmons-Hancock, they were all in their early to mid-20s.
The small-town dynamics are paramount to understanding how this massive blind spot was created.
How so?
Well, in a tight-knit community, there's a very strong baseline assumption of trust. You know your neighbors. You probably went to high school together.
Right, everyone knows everyone.
Yeah. The social contract is built on a foundation of presumed transparency.
I want to try a metaphor here to see if I have my head around this.
Go for it.
Think of a community's social trust, like a computer's basic firewall. A firewall is designed to block obvious known threats, right? Like a stranger acting aggressively or someone trying to break into your house.
It spots the obvious danger.
Exactly. It spots the guy in the ski mask. But Parker didn't act like a known threat. She operated like a zero-day exploit in software.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
She used the system's own trusted protocols like baby showers, Facebook posts, ultrasound photos, gender reveal cakes to bypass the firewall entirely.
Right.
The community didn't fail to see a threat. Their security system simply wasn't programmed to view a pregnant neighbor cutting a pink cake as a threat.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. She weaponized normalcy. We operate on what psychologists call Normalcy bias.
Normalcy bias.
Yes, we assume that the people around us are bound by the same general rules of reality and morality that we are.
Yeah, you just assume people aren't monsters.
Exactly. If someone hosts a gender reveal party in broad daylight, invites their friends and cuts a cake, well, the human brain is simply not wired to look at that and think, this is a sociopathic stage play.
We don't demand to see medical records when an acquaintance says they are expecting.
Precisely. And she weaponized that against her intimate partner as well. Wade Griffin was living with her.
Which is just crazy to me.
I know. The sheer audacity required to maintain a silicone prop while living in close proximity with someone speaks to a level of compartmentalization that is staggering. She utilized his inherent trust in her to sustain the illusion right within their home.
But the biological clock, even a fake one, eventually runs out of time.
It always does.
As October 2020 rolled around, she was hitting that 10-month mark. The fake due date had arrived.
Time was up.
The meticulously crafted digital and social illusion she had spent nearly a year building was on a direct, high-speed collision course with physical reality. She had promised a baby. Wade was expecting a baby. The entire town of New Boston was expecting a baby.
And she had to produce one.
Right.
The lie had backed her into a corner where social manipulation was no longer sufficient.
Yeah.
Physical proof was absolutely required.
And the medical staff shattered her narrative in minutes later on, but the justice system requires more than just biological proof. It requires defining the exact nature of the crime, and that introduces a horrifying reality.
It really does.
Like, how does an individual pivot from ordering a fake silicone belly online to literally committing murder? I'm stuck on something here.
What's that?
I can wrap my head around a sociopath committing a crime of passion or a pathological liar forging a document. But the bridge between buying a silicone prop online and literally taking another human life, I mean, that is a leap my brain just completely rejects.
That's hard to fathom.
How does someone cross that chasm? Was she dissociating, or was this a calculated, cold-blooded endgame from day one?
It is the defining psychological question of the entire case. To understand how she crossed that chasm, we really have to look at the concept of narcissistic collapse and the preservation of the ego.
Narcissistic collapse.
Yes. For Parker, the lie had become her entire reality. It was the absolute foundation of her relationship and her social standing. To admit the lie at that late stage would mean total ego death.
Like losing everything.
Exactly. It would mean facing unimaginable humiliation, losing her partner, and being exposed to her community as a fraud of monumental proportions.
So the lie became more important than human life.
That's it, exactly. For an individual deeply entrenched in a pathological fabrication, protecting the lie becomes a matter of psychological survival. And when physical reality demanded a child, her empathy completely shut down.
She didn't see a person anymore.
No, she didn't view her victim as a human being. She viewed her as a biological resource to be harvested to sustain the narrative. It is the ultimate terrifying objectification.
Wow.
The digital detachment we discussed earlier, the ability to view life as just a curated feed that bled into a terrifying lack of empathy in the physical world.
Which brings us to the events of October 9th, 2020. This is where the psychological study of deception ends and the real nightmare begins.
Yes.
Taylor Parker targeted Reagan Simmons-Hancock. Reagan was just 21 years old. She was an acquaintance of Parker's. And tragically, Reagan was 35 weeks pregnant with a baby girl she had already named Braxlyn Sage.
The timeline of the attack is incredibly difficult to discuss, but it is essential to understanding the legal parameters of the case and the precise nature of the violence.
Right.
Parker entered Reagan's home, and what followed was a targeted, brutal assault.
I want to make sure we are being very precise here based on the source material, because the exact sequence of events became the central pillar of the legal case later on.
It was crucial.
What exactly did the prosecution establish regarding the timelines and the causes of death?
So the forensic evidence presented at trial established a very clear two-part sequence. First, Reagan Simmons-Hancock was subjected to a violent physical assault. Parker inflicted multiple stab wounds and blunt force trauma.
God, that's awful.
It is. Reagan's cause of death was definitively linked to this initial catastrophic violence. She was killed by the trauma of the assault itself.
She died from the attack before the abduction of the infant even began.
Yes. She was either deceased or actively dying from those fatal injuries when Parker initiated the second phase of the crime, which was performing a crude, non-medical incision into the abdomen to remove the unborn child.
And the infant, Braxlyn Sage.
Braxlyn's death was a direct result of being forcibly and improperly removed from the womb. Because Parker was obviously not a medical professional, and because this was a brutal, unsanitary cutting rather than a surgical procedure, it caused massive fetal trauma.
And catastrophic blood loss, I imagine.
Exactly. The infant did not survive the unauthorized removal process.
This introduces a highly complex legal hurdle that the prosecution had to navigate. Like, how do you prosecute the death of a baby that was never officially born? I know the trial hinged heavily on this specific legal nuance.
It really did. The law requires extremely precise definitions. To secure a capital murder conviction, which carries the possibility of the death penalty, the prosecution had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that baby Bracklin was alive at the exact moment the unauthorized cutting began.
Why was that exact moment the legal linchpin?
Because of how fetal homicide and independent victimhood are legally defined.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If the defense could argue that the infant was already deceased before the cutting began, meaning she had died in utero as a result of the trauma inflicted on the mother during the initial assault, the charges would be drastically different.
It wouldn't be two murders.
Right. It would likely be a single murder charge with enhancements rather than a double homicide. But by proving medically that the baby was alive when the removal started and that the removal itself was the cause of the infant's death, it legally established Bracklin Sage as a separate, distinct victim of kidnapping and murder.
Independent of Reagan's death.
Exactly.
So establishing two separate murders is what elevated it to a capital offense.
Yes. It was paramount for securing the capital murder conviction. It proves that there were two distinct lives taken through two distinct mechanisms of violence.
The brutal irony here is that while this monstrous lie took 10 agonizingly long months to build, and the crime took moments of unimaginable violence to commit, the unraveling of Parker's fabricated reality happened almost instantaneously.
It really did.
It collapsed the absolute second it intersected with the real world.
Because reality, specifically medical reality, is completely immune to manipulation. You just cannot gaslight biology.
Let's walk through that immediate aftermath, because the contrast between her planning and her execution is staggering.
It's unbelievable.
It's October 9th, shortly after the murders. Taylor Parker is fleeing the scene, and she's driving Wade Griffin's car. She is pulled over for speeding by a Texas state trooper, and she has the infant, Bracklin, with her in the vehicle.
Right.
The trooper approaches the car, and Parker claims she has just given birth on the side of the road.
I mean, put yourself in the shoes of that state trooper for a moment. You pull over a speeding vehicle on a Texas highway, probably expecting to hand out a routine traffic ticket.
Just a normal day on the job.
Exactly. Instead, you walk up to the window and are confronted with a woman covered in blood, holding an unresponsive infant, claiming she just had a roadside delivery.
That is horrifying.
The trooper, operating entirely on human instinct and emergency protocol, immediately shifts into life-saving mode and facilitates getting her an ambulance to a nearby hospital.
But the moment she crosses the threshold of that hospital, the 10-month illusion shatters.
Instantly.
The medical personnel at the facility examine her, and they instantly debunk her story. How exactly does a hospital instantly debunk a claim of childbirth? Because obviously she's covered in blood, she has a baby. So what are the doctors looking for that immediately gave her away?
Well, this brings us to the biological forensics of childbirth. When a woman gives birth, her body undergoes massive, undeniable physical and hormonal shifts.
Right.
A doctor performing a postpartum examination is looking for very specific markers. First, they look at cervical dilation. A cervix that has just passed an infant will be fully dilated and will take days to close back up.
You can't fake that.
No. They also look for lochia, which is a specific type of postpartum bleeding originating from the uterus. They examine the condition of the vaginal walls and the perineum.
They are looking for the physical trauma of delivery.
Exactly. But they're also looking for the placenta. If a woman claims to have given birth on the side of the road, the placenta either needs to have been delivered as well, or it is still retained inside the uterus, which is a massive medical emergency.
Right. They need to address that immediately.
Yes. Furthermore, they can check her core, body temperature, hormone levels, and just the complete absence of any tearing or physical exertion markers. The hospital staff found absolutely zero physical evidence that her body had recently sustained a pregnancy, let alone a delivery.
So it wasn't just a suspicion, it was a biological certainty that she was lying.
A biological certainty. The absence of that physical evidence, coupled with the horrific, traumatic condition of the infant, immediately shifted the situation from a medical emergency to a massive, multi-agency criminal investigation.
Wow.
The medical staff dismantled in a matter of minutes what she had spent nearly a year constructing.
It is just such a stark contrast. On one hand, she had the perceived cleverness, the cunning, to forge medical documents that fooled her community, to orchestrate elaborate social media narratives, and to maintain a silicone belly hoax while living with a partner.
She was very meticulous about all of that.
But on the other hand, the absolute delusion of her escape plan. Did she seriously believe she could walk into a triage unit, have experienced obstetricians examine her and just say, yep, had a baby on the highway, and they wouldn't notice she hadn't actually given birth?
It highlights a very common cognitive dissonance in crimes of this nature.
What do you mean?
The perpetrator becomes so hyper-focused on the immediate, desperate objective. In this case, acquiring the baby to present to her boyfriend to finalize the lie.
Right.
So they focus so much on that they fail entirely to construct a viable long-term plan for the aftermath. The lie was designed for a social audience. It was designed to fool Facebook friends and a trusting boyfriend.
It wasn't made for doctors.
Exactly. It was never designed to withstand a medical examination. She really believed her own narrative's momentum would somehow carry her through the physical reality.
So she is caught. The truth comes out in the most horrific way imaginable, and the justice system steps in to address the violence. In October 2022, Taylor Parker was convicted of capital murder.
Yes.
And on November 9, 2022, she was sentenced to death.
Right. And according to the sources covering the case up through Twanna review in June 2026, Parker is currently incarcerated on death row at the Patrick L. O'Daniel unit.
Which is where exactly?
That's the women's maximum security prison in Gatesville, Texas.
Okay. And Queen T's review explicitly notes her current status as of 2026. So for those who aren't familiar with how capital punishment works in Texas, what does the appeals process look like for a case of this magnitude?
Well, while she was sentenced in late 2022, no execution date has been set, and that is very standard procedure. The appeals process in capital cases is designed to be extremely exhaustive.
As it should be.
Right. Her legal team has been actively pursuing various appeals. We know that they filed a petition to the United States Supreme Court, but in May 2026, the Supreme Court officially declined to review her case.
Meaning her conviction and the death sentence remain intact at the highest level.
Correct. But if we look at the reality of the Texas judicial system, the legal machinery moves very, very slowly.
I've heard that.
Yeah, the appeals process for death row inmates typically spans many years, often decades. There are multiple mandatory layers of state and federal appeals designed to ensure absolute due process before a sentence is carried out.
Okay.
So despite the Supreme Court declining that specific petition in 2026, an execution date is not expected in the immediate future.
So Taylor Parker is locked away in Gatesville. The justice system has made its ruling, and the slow churn of appeals has begun. But the story doesn't end with a gavel strike.
No, not at all.
Because when someone detonates a psychological and physical bomb like this in the middle of a community, the collateral damage is staggering. It's not just the immediate victims whose lives are destroyed. It's everyone caught in the web of the lie.
The blast radius, or perhaps a better term would be the shock wave of a deception this profound, it touches everyone. And we really have to look closely at the devastation left behind. Starting, of course, with Reagan's family.
Homer Hancock, Reagan's husband. He lost his 21-year-old wife and his unborn daughter in a single morning, and he is left to raise their surviving older daughter entirely alone.
It's heartbreaking.
The unimaginable grief there is just, well, there are no words that can adequately describe it. But the legal fallout continued on the civil side, too. Following the criminal conviction, Homer Hancock filed a civil lawsuit alleging negligence.
And this is where the web of complicity and the concept of proximity to the crime becomes a major focal point. The civil lawsuit was filed against both Taylor Parker and Wade Griffin.
Right. Wade Griffin, Parker's boyfriend. The man she lived with, the man she claimed was the father of this fake baby.
I want to unpack the logic of this lawsuit because it gets into how we assign blame.
Yes.
The lawsuit alleged that Griffin should have been aware of Parker's reckless behavior, and it specifically pointed to the fact that he permitted her to use his vehicle.
Right, the car.
The very car she used to drive to Reagan's house to commit the murder, and the car she was driving when she was apprehended by the state trooper.
The lawsuit is essentially attempting to establish a chain of liability. But what's truly fascinating here is the massive gulf between the public's perception of Wade Griffin's role and his own stated reality.
Oh, yeah.
When the documentary Maternal Instinct dropped on Netflix, it sparked a heavy online debate.
Oh, the internet had an absolute field day with Wade Griffin.
They almost always do in these cases. Viewers took to social media, specifically Reddit and Twitter, expressing absolute unfiltered disbelief.
What were they saying? The prevailing sentiment online was basically, how could you live with a woman for 10 months, sleep in the exact same bed, share a daily routine, and not know her pregnancy was a silicone prop? How did you not see the red flags?
Yeah.
The court of public opinion was incredibly harsh. They were essentially accusing him of, at best, willful, negligent ignorance, and at worst, tacit complicity in the crime.
I want to stop and analyze why the internet reacts that way. Because it's so easy for documentary viewers to sit on their couches, watching a narrative that has been neatly edited into a 90-minute film with ominous pacing, and say, oh, I would have spotted that fake ultrasound immediately.
It's a classic psychological defense mechanism. It's known as the just world fallacy.
Explain how that applies here.
Well, a just world fallacy is the cognitive bias that assumes the world is fundamentally fair, and therefore people get what they deserve and bad things only happen to people who make obvious mistakes.
Ah.
When viewers look at Wade Griffin, they desperately want to blame him. They want to believe he was complicit or incredibly foolish. Because if Wade Griffin is completely innocent, if he's just a normal guy who loved his partner and trusted her, that means a horrifying truth.
That it could happen to them.
Exactly. That any of us could be fooled by the people we sleep next to. Accepting Wade's innocence means accepting our own vulnerability to intimate deception. And human beings hate feeling vulnerable. So, they blame the victim to make themselves feel safer.
That makes so much sense. Hindsight is 20/20. When you watch a true crime documentary and you know a murder is coming in Act 3, every fake ultrasound looks obvious.
Right.
Every canceled doctor's appointment looks like a glaring red flag. But when you're living your daily life, making breakfast, paying the electric bill, you don't look at your partner of several years and think, is she capable of the unthinkable?
You just don't.
We are biologically and socially programmed to trust our intimate partners. If you constantly interrogate your spouse's reality, if you demand medical proof of their statements, you cannot have a functional human relationship.
Exactly. We extend the benefit of the doubt to the people we love. If your pregnant partner acts a little strange or says they don't want you touching their stomach because it's sensitive or painful, your first thought isn't, she's wearing a silicone belly and planning a homicide.
Well, of course not.
Your first thought is, I love her, she's uncomfortable, I want to be respectful of her boundaries. The internet judges from a place of omniscience, knowing the ending. Wade Griffin was operating from a place of intimate trust.
And you contrast that online judgment with Griffin's actual trial testimony. He took the stand, under oath, and testified that he was an entirely unwitting victim of this elaborate ruse.
Yes, he did.
He stated that this ordeal had been the most difficult, traumatic experience of his life. And you really have to try to imagine the psychological whiplash.
It's mind-blowing.
You wake up one day, genuinely believing you are about to become a father, only to find out by the end of the day that your partner is a murderer, the baby was stolen from a dying woman, and the last 10 months of your life were an intricately staged theatrical production designed specifically to manipulate you.
It is a profound, life-altering trauma. He described in court how the events and the subsequent legal proceedings severely damaged his reputation in that small town.
I can imagine.
When a community feels betrayed on this scale, they look for someone to blame. And when the primary perpetrator is locked away behind bars, the collective anger often spills over onto those who are closest to them, regardless of their actual culpability.
So where is Wade Griffin now? Because navigating life after something like this seems impossible. According to the sources, he is 31 years old as of 2026, and he is actively trying to rebuild his life in Sims, Texas, mostly away from the glaring public eye.
Yes, he has focused heavily on his professional work and community engagement as a way to heal. He works with his family at Circle G Farms, handling daily operations and agricultural sales. He also runs the Circle G hog buying facility in Sims.
And he's actively trying to give back to the very community that was so fractured by this deception. In February 2026, he hosted a community fundraising event called the Reagan Hancock Benefit.
Right.
It included a hog hunting contest specifically designed to raise money to help a community member in need. He's also utilized social media, especially after the documentary came out and reignited the public discourse, to share his perspective and talk openly about the devastating experience of being subjected to that level of intimate deception.
He is really attempting to reclaim his narrative. He refuses to be defined solely as the gullible boyfriend of a murderer.
Yeah.
Through his work and his community actions, he is demonstrating that he, too, is a survivor of Parker's pathology. He is trying to honor the actual victims by fostering community support rather than letting the tragedy completely define his existence.
Which is a really complex reality to navigate. And this tension we've been discussing, the tension between how viewers perceive a case from afar, safely behind a screen, and the grim, complicated reality of the people actually living through it, that leads us perfectly into an analysis of the documentary itself.
Absolutely.
Because how media shapes our understanding of these tragedies is a conversation we absolutely need to have.
The lens through which we view true crime dictates what we take away from it. The directorial choices frame our empathy, our outrage, and our understanding.
Right.
And the 2026 documentary Maternal Instinct is a prime example of a film that forces the viewer to consciously confront how they consume this type of media.
Twanna Yuvet's review places a heavy emphasis on the reception of Jessica Dimmock's film. And the consensus among critics seems to be that it is a piece of highly responsible, ethical filmmaking. Critics from outlets like Ongoing now specifically praised its ethical rigor.
Let's analyze why they praised it. What stands out to you about how they approached the narrative structure? Because they actively avoided a lot of the standard lucrative tropes of the true crime genre.
Well, first and foremost, they avoided the whodunit trap.
Yes.
In a lot of true crime, the director hides the killer's identity until the last 20 minutes to build suspense. But from the very beginning of Maternal Instinct, you know exactly who did it.
There's no mystery.
There is no sensationalized mystery. They aren't treating Reagan's death as a puzzle to be solved for the audience's entertainment. Instead, critics called it a masterclass in psychological dissection.
I agree with that.
They focused the narrative energy on how this web of deception was built step by step and why the psychological safety nets failed.
And we see that ethical approach reflected in the specific directorial choices. Critics explicitly noted the visual and narrative restraint Dimmock used.
How so?
Well, in a lot of mainstream true crime, you get that pulsing, percussive, non-diegetic, dramatic music meant to manufacture suspense or artificially manipulate your heart rate.
Yeah, the classic thumping bass when they show a dark house.
Exactly. Maternal Instinct largely avoids that kind of emotional manipulation. They let the stark, horrifying facts of the case carry the narrative weight.
The silence speaks volumes.
Right. The silence is often more impactful than a booming score. Instead of lingering on graphic crime scene photos of the violence, the camera lingers on the empty spaces left behind, like the quiet streets of New Boston, the spaces where life used to be.
And Queen T emphasizes that the film had a very clear, unwavering focus on humanity. The filmmakers made a deliberate effort to ensure that the sheer horror and spectacle of Taylor Parker's actions did not eclipse the humanity of Reagan Simmons-Hancock and her baby, Braxlyn Sage.
That's so important.
It wasn't just the Taylor Parker show. It was a deeply sobering, respectful record of two lives that were violently stolen.
Which is precisely why it is such a difficult, uncomfortable watch. It doesn't offer the viewer the comfort of a neat, entertaining, gamified narrative.
No, it doesn't let you off the hook.
It forces you to sit with the grief. And the audience reaction heavily reflects that discomfort.
Oh, the viewer distress was palpable. If you look at the Reddit threads and social media discussions immediately after the film dropped in June 2026, people were viscerally affected. Viewers called it unhinged, distressing, and incredibly hard to process.
There is one specific, highly controversial moment that is frequently cited in the reviews and online discussions, which is the inclusion of the actual 911 call made by Reagan's mother.
Yeah. Hearing the raw, unfiltered terror and the guttural grief of a mother discovering her daughter in that condition, I mean, it strips away any protective illusion you might have that you are just watching a story on Netflix.
You're not protected from the reality.
Exactly. You aren't watching a movie. You are bearing witness to the absolute worst moment of a real family's life.
And the inclusion of that audio sparked a significant ongoing debate among viewers about content warnings and the responsibilities of streaming platforms.
Oh, for sure.
Because the film was so intense, many viewers argued it should carry explicit, detailed trigger warnings for violence against pregnant women and infants, arguing that the standard TVMA rating wasn't sufficient for the level of trauma depicted.
But on the flip side, some viewers really appreciated the film's directorial choices. They appreciated the tight pacing. They praised the fact that there was no fluff, no unnecessary reenactments.
Right, they just gave the facts.
They felt that by not padding the story, the film forced the audience to look directly at the reality of the crime. Although some viewers did express a desire for more background on Parker's history of manipulation prior to 2020.
Right, wanting to understand the deeper etiology of her pathology.
Yeah, they wanted to know if there were earlier, smaller lies that escalated to this point.
Which brings up the ultimate philosophical question of the genre. What does this all mean for us, the consumers of true crime? Why do we seek out these deeply sobering stories?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because, let's be honest, no one watches a documentary like Maternal Instinct to relax and unwind on a Friday night.
No. You watch it and you feel heavy for days. So why do we do it?
If we connect this to the broader picture of why true crime exists as a massive cultural phenomenon, I would argue that responsible true crime, ethical true crime, shouldn't be entertaining.
I agree completely.
If you are feeling entertained or amused by the murder of a 21-year-old mother, there's a fundamental psychological disconnect occurring. Responsible true crime should be a tough watch. It should be a mirror held up to the darkest, most uncomfortable corners of human behavior.
It's an educational tool, in a dark way.
Exactly. We watch it to reckon with the extremes of human capability. We watch it to understand the psychological warning signs of deception, to challenge our own normalcy biases, and most importantly, to empathize with the victims.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary exploration of the human condition. It reminds us of our vulnerabilities.
It forces us to acknowledge a terrifying truth, that the monsters aren't always hiding in the woods wearing masks. Sometimes they're baking cupcakes for a baby shower. Sometimes they're sitting next to you on the couch.
It completely shatters the false, comfortable sense of security that we build around ourselves to function in society.
We have covered so much ground today. We've journeyed from the sterile digital fabrication of forged ultrasound pictures on Facebook and explored the biological forensics that expose those lies.
It's been a lot.
We've looked into the profound, bloody reality that ruined a family and fractured a small Texas community. We examined the justice system's slow churn, the collateral damage inflicted on people like Wade Griffin by both the crime and the just world fallacy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we've analyzed our own role as viewers, sitting behind a screen, consuming this tragedy through the careful, ethical lens of Jessica Dimmock's documentary.
It is a case that demands deep reflection. It doesn't offer easy answers or comfortable resolutions, only difficult realities about trust, deception, and human vulnerability.
Before we wrap up, I want to relay a specific call to action from journalist and content creator Twanna, whose phenomenal, in-depth review of the documentary guided our deep dive today. She explicitly reminds everyone to check the description box before you leave for full info and her socials.
Definitely do that.
And she brought up a really fascinating point in her review. She expressed an interest in hosting a panel discussion to explore these complex themes further.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah. She wants to connect with others who might have proximity to such events or who deeply understand the psychological and community dynamics at play here. So if this case has sparked thoughts for you, definitely look into her work, check that description box, and join that conversation.
It is absolutely a conversation worth having, especially regarding the psychology of deception on this scale and how communities can recover. Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with.
Lay it on us.
We spend so much of our time a day cultivating our digital lives, seeking validation through screens and curating our realities for an audience of acquaintances.
We really do.
We trust the avatars people present to us. In an era where our lives are increasingly lived and validated online, what happens to a community's fundamental trust when the monsters aren't hiding in the shadows, but are instead standing right in front of us, confidently hosting gender reveal parties in broad daylight?
It's a terrifying question because it brings us right back to where we started. When a lie isn't just a short sprint to avoid trouble, but a 10-month ultra-marathon built on a foundation of absolute betrayal and biological impossibility, well, you have to wonder just how heavy that weight really is.
And who ultimately pays the price when the physical world finally forces it to drop?
It is definitely something to think about.
It really is.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, check the description box, and we'll catch you on the next one.